Welcome to Go Bucks. We are back after an awesome weekend of football. Michigan played Penn State, and to be honest, I was pretty worried about that game. I thought Michigan was better than Penn State, but I was worried. I thought all the distractions were going to be a huge issue, and they were. I think. I mean, it kind of played itself out, but yeah, I mean, today, I mean, after that game, now I'm ready to jump to Michigan versus Ohio State. I don't know about you, Matt, but like I feel like both Michigan and Ohio State are not going to lose a game. They're not going to lose this coming weekend. There's very little chance of that. Karma hopefully doesn't come get us for saying that. But man, I'm ready to go. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing I'm even worried about is injuries at this point. It's just like it's so hard to even tell like what the injury reports are. I know like the really bad news for us is Ransom has been out, um, and they were not giving good updates on what his availability was, and he was seen at the game on Saturday, in one of those things where his knee is on one of those wheelie pads or whatever, where you sort of get around, wheel yourself around. So one of his legs is, and I think he had some sort of wrap around his leg, or so we don't know what's going on. But it sounds like all we know is it was like a longer term injury. Definitely looks like he's not coming back from Michigan. So I guess the best case scenario is we get to the playoffs and he gets back for the playoffs. So losing him, he was like a top tackler on our defense. So that's a huge blow. Luckily, we do have a good amount of a good amount of depth at safety. And Proctor was also out, but that was just a concussion. So hopefully he will be back this week. If not, he'll definitely be back for Michigan. And so we'll have Proctor and Styles back there. And then Burke was back, which is huge. Eichenberg should probably be back this week. That wasn't. I don't think they said that was a short term issue. So really, I mean, we've been really getting dinged up on defense. But I would say out of all the injuries on the whole team, the most important thing, hands down, right now is getting Emeka back to 100% because our offense has not had 100% Marvin and 100% Emeka for quite a while now. Emeka got hurt at the game I was at the Ohio State Maryland game, and that was a while ago. And he missed a bunch of games, and then when he got back from that, he's just been like, I don't know, 60% playing. And I mean he's getting like he got like one catch this week, got maybe a couple catches for 20, 30 yards last week. I mean, I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but I mean, for us to have a good chance against Michigan at Michigan, I think we really need him close to 100% because that Michigan is smart enough to, double and triple Marv. And, our number two threat has sort of been between Emeka and Stover this year. But now that Emeka is out, it's just Stover. So those two have been great. Stover also was injured, and he didn't really play the last week, and he was sort of 80% this last week and caught 7 balls for like 100 yards and a touchdown or 80 yards. So he's a beast. He's like the best tight end we probably ever had. And yeah, it's just all about health at this point. Like that's the only thing, just all these defenders and then Emeka getting those guys healthy, and then Travion staying healthy, of course, because he's never really had good luck with staying healthy. So it's just all about that's all it is.
Yeah, yeah. I texted you during the game up against Michigan State, and I think it was what maybe like the third carry by Travion. I said you guys should just bench him like
Yeah,
for
well,
the rest of the
they
year.
took him out. They took him out quick. They took him out, and like I think at the end of the second quarter, he was gone. So he had his 50 yards and a touchdown, and that was that. Maybe even too much for my liking. I mean, do you see the superstar running back for Texas towards ACL Banks? He's out for the
Wow.
year. So Texas, in my opinion, they were a long shot anyway because they haven't been playing that well lately. But I mean, a couple of those games, Ewers was out, but I think Texas is definitely done. I think Alabama's going to probably jump them in the rankings, if not this week, then definitely next week because they're not gonna win out without him. He was like, not just their running game, he was also a big part of their pass game too. So
Hey, we got Antoine says something funny. You must have been mentioning like we need ransom for the playoffs in your opening rant. Says you ain't got to worry about that because you're not getting to the playoffs.
Antoine, even if all things terrible happen and we somehow didn't beat Michigan, it could just be the same thing as last year where we sneak in because if we stay at
Yeah.
number one and you lose a close game at Michigan, you know, there's a decent chance, depending on what's going on with the rest of the country. Obviously, I don't even want to think about that because, I don't even think I could fully enjoy a national title if we lost to Michigan and then got to the playoffs and then didn't play Michigan and then beat other teams and won. I just don't think I would be able to fully enjoy it because I know you and I just it would just feel sort of dirty, right? Like even though you won the national title, well, yeah, we beat Alabama and we beat Georgia, but we lost to Michigan that year. So is that really a real
You'd have
national championship? Because
you would have
I
felt
don't really think
you'd have felt better.
I
You'd have
don't
felt
yeah
better about that.
I don't think that yeah I don't think so. I don't think I would really be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, I think you would have enjoyed it. You'd have beat Georgia. I have a feeling you would.
Uh,
But no, you know
I don't
what?
know.
Yeah, and resting players, that's yeah. I mean, it seems like your starters were in there for quite a while against Michigan State. I don't know about that. We got to
No,
go
no,
back to
we took out all the key players at halftime. We took out either the halftime or after the first drive. I know Marvin and Trey were out at the start of the third quarter. So our quarterback stayed in, but we put in our backup tight ends. We put in our backup receivers.
well, McCord definitely needs the practice, so I'm all right with that. But let's talk about the Michigan-Penn State game for a minute. Let's recap. So I know you watched that because you were texting me
No, I
during that.
actually didn't. I actually didn't get to watch all that. I watched the start of it, and then I had to go run some errands with the family, so I missed like 90% of it, unfortunately. And then I was able to watch the extended highlights today, and then of course I read a lot about it and saw a bunch of clips about it. But from what I can tell, the real X factor, like you get the running backs that get a lot of publicity for that win, but there was a ton of really key like third down plays where McCarthy extended it and did a really good job. Even though he didn't throw a lot in the game, he did a really good job on some key third downs. But ultimately, somehow, like at the beginning, Penn State was just destroying you guys. Like they were getting huge sacks, and they had the one sack early on McCarthy where he ran back 10 yards and got destroyed.
Yeah.
And your right tackle couldn't block anybody. And at the beginning, it was looking good. And in Penn State, I thought that Aller has been doing a little bit better the last few weeks. I thought maybe they'd be able to pass and get a couple touchdowns that way. I didn't think they'd be able to run at all on you guys. So I was surprised. Apparently, they changed up their run block scheme and did some stuff you weren't expecting, and it worked at least for a half. And
Yeah.
and the big ones, you guys had a really small lead, and Penn State, I think it was the beginning of the third quarter when they were driving, and they had a good drive going, and then Aller fumbled. He got the first down, but then he fumbled, and that was it right there. And you
First
guys ended
drive
up
of the
only
second
getting,
half.
yeah, you only got a field goal there. But yeah, I think that was probably the biggest play of the game. That and the other biggest play of the game was when Penn State had the ball with 4 minutes to go, and on 4th and 6 on their own 30, they went for it, which was just really stupid. I mean, that was just the bonehead play of the game. Their defense is playing pretty good. You have to kick that. You have to punt that.
Yeah, I mean the defenses were both of them were playing really good, but I mean because it worked for Michigan with running the ball something like 30 times in like the starting of the third quarter. In the middle of the third quarter, I think they ran like
Yeah,
30 straight times.
32
That's
times. Yep.
that's just plain bizarre almost. And I chalk that up to maybe Sherrone Moore being, like the first time being in that situation. If Harbaugh was there, I have to believe they would have they would have run the ball a lot with Harbaugh. But I feel like he probably would have maybe sprinkled in a throw here and there, maybe a little more. But
Yeah,
you know what's
I'm not
funny?
sure.
How many
Yeah,
times you have texted, you and I have been texting during a game, and you've always said, "Why did they stop running? It was working."
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and it's just like that was like this is the case where they didn't stop running. You know, a team actually didn't stop running, and it's amazing. And I thought Penn State should have been running the ball like a lot more, but Penn State and James Franklin seem to want to create this offense all around Drew Aller. Like they want him to pass
Well,
the ball.
they have no receivers is a problem. Their receivers are really bad, and the middle of their offensive line is also really bad.
Yeah, it was it was just amazing. Like I was watching that game, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, Michigan, they won't be able to do that against Ohio State because they won't be able to stop Ohio State. Like they they won't be able to stop Ohio State like that because Drew Eller is bad. He's not a good quarterback right now. His passes
Yeah.
sometimes the ones that he has to
Well,
have
how much?
bad.
Again, I didn't get. I only saw a lot of the highlights, but how much of that was because he had pressure in his face?
Nah, there wasn't. I mean,
It wasn't.
sure, of course he had a little bit of pressure, maybe, but he had time to throw. He's just
You think so?
a
Okay.
really inaccurate quarterback. He at times. Sometimes his throws are awesome, but if he's got to go like down the field more than like 10 yards, it's
Yeah. I
not
mean,
good.
against
He
us,
can't do it.
he had one third down completion against us, and that was in the last like 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just excuse me. So I was just watching that game in just awe that they were able to run the ball like that and have such success against Penn State's defense. They ran for over 200 yards and still averaged something like 5.6 yards a carry.
Didn't you
And
guys get like 400 yards against him last year, though?
there's four, yeah, yeah. It wasn't as good, obviously.
So Penn State was twice as good this year.
Yeah, they were twice as good. Yeah, they didn't lose by as much, but
Yeah.
it was just a
Only half as
game.
bad.
Yeah, so true.
I honestly think, 'cause I don't think that they're. I mean,
Honda McCord.
we
That's
against Penn State, we didn't have Emeka, and we still passed for 264. I felt like our offense was doing really well against them, except for we didn't have Travion either, and we just weren't able to score in the red zone because we didn't have Emeka and we didn't have Henderson. So plus we aren't good in the red zone anyway. But we were moving the ball a lot better than you guys overall because just like the passing game was just we were doing whatever we wanted, and I think with you guys, I think if your right tackle could have blocked a little better, I think you guys probably would have opened it up and just kept passing more. I think you just because after that one big sack early, and then just a lot of pressure every time he tried to throw, I think that they just didn't want to risk a big defensive blunder because
yeah,
I'm sorry, offensive blunder and
offensive
losing points
blunder.
that way because they had to have known that the only way that Michigan was really going to lose that game is if Penn State's defense made a big play, and they know. Although Corum did fumble once, most likely your running backs are the safest bet. And the surest thing is to just play it safe on offense and wait for Franklin to make stupid plays, like trying to go for two in the first half, and then punting with 4 minutes left from your own 30. I mean, those
Well,
two decisions helped lose that game.
you know what was hilarious about James Franklin is going for two in the beginning was, right before the first half. That was boneheaded. But
Yes.
it was even more boneheaded when he went for two after getting the second touchdown because they were down by like 8.
Or was
But
it 9?
they were down. Well, yeah, I mean, they went for two once and went for two a
Yeah.
second time and didn't get it.
Yeah.
But if they hadn't gone for two and just kicked the field goal,
Yeah.
they would have been down by 8 at the end of the game. No, they didn't get the onside kick, so it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But instead,
Yeah.
they were down by 9 at the end of the game, and that's a 2-possession game. Like,
yeah, well, I think the analytics. A lot of people were criticizing that second one. I don't know if that matters because let's say you get the onside kick and then you get a touchdown. You're eventually going to need to get that 2-point conversion, and then if you try for it the first time and you don't get it, then at least you have to do 2 score. I mean, it didn't matter. Like you had to get it at some point. Either you get it there or you lose. Like at some point you have to get the 2-pointer. So I don't think that really mattered. It's just the one they want it. He kicks it. I mean, ultimately, none of that even determined the win. So basically, it was Drew Aller fumbled the ball once, and that was huge. And then the other time was not punting on 4th and 6 at the 30. Those two things lost them the game. Other than giving up the big plays by the running backs, of course. But those I was just talking about the Franklin screw ups. Franklin had that really big call at the end that he's just wait around long enough, he's going to screw up eventually.
Hey, look who joined us. I think this is Brian Weaver.
OH.
I know.
I just don't usually respond to that. I don't have a response to that. What's going on, Brian?
Man, it's been a good weekend.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Antoine
beat
Penn State.
What's
Yeah,
that?
Antoine.
Is it because
Go ahead.
Michigan beat Penn State, right?
That was it was a competitive game. I'll say that. I was pulling for Penn State, but when you've got James Franklin given a solid 8 points away, it's hard to overcome such bad coaching, and I feel for Penn State fans. But hey, Michigan finally played somebody, and with all the adversity, they did what they had to do. Playing in Happy Valley is not easy, and obviously they needed to win. They got an opportunity to play Ohio State at the end of the season undefeated, and it's all in front of them. So, but
Yeah.
Ohio State, I think Ohio State's clicking. They're playing well, and it's nice to see C.J. Stroud's on fire right now. It's nice to see Bosa and Chase Young playing together for San Francisco, and I like Premier League soccer too. So Chelsea had a drew with Man City this morning, so it's been a good weekend for sports all in all.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, Matt and I were just talking about how I know we still have 2 games. Like one game, both teams have a game this coming weekend before the game, but it sure feels like game week to me for Michigan and Ohio State because I don't think Michigan's not going to lose to Maryland, I don't think. But who does Ohio State play? Do they have
Minnesota, who just lost again. They were terrible.
They're not going to lose. It's game week, man. It's the game week. I feel like it is. We're just going to spend 2 weeks on this instead of 1. How about that?
Yeah,
that's good. What Matt, you wanted to get to Antoine's question there. We missed one of his questions. I think he had another one there.
Oh yeah, so Michigan was having some problems early on, and I think they went to a more heavy set on the offensive line. Apparently they added an extra defensive tackle or something to help block.
Yeah,
Someone
they went
said
to
that.
they were. I mean, they always try to run with, or a lot of times they'll run with those 2 tight end sets, but they were actually going 3 tight ends and bringing the extra offensive lineman. And I think Ohio State will have a plan for that. I mean, I think it definitely sets up well that I think the style of Penn State's defense is really similar to Ohio State's, and the fact that Michigan kind of, I'm not going to say tip their hand, but obviously you got to see a little bit of how Michigan's going to try to attack, and it was interesting to see how Penn State did a really good job, I thought, against Michigan's offense for the most part. They just gambled. I thought Diaz was kind of overly aggressive in the first half and gave up a couple of huge runs that they opened themselves up for, and then they just got worn down in the fourth quarter there, especially when Franklin went for it on 4th and 6 with 6 minutes to go, which was just a stupid decision.
Yeah, that was the dumbest decision of all time.
It was unbelievable how unbalanced Michigan's attack was. I mean, they had nothing in the throw game at all. And granted, they didn't have to, but man, they really did not have anything at all in the throw game. So I think Ohio State will have a plan for that heavy set attack, and they'll be very leery of running all those kind of run blitzes the way Penn State did, because it worked a lot, but when it didn't, they gave up really big runs.
Yeah,
well,
and then they had
I'm
all
wrong.
the screens too. They had some successful screens, and then they also had the quarterback run and then McCarthy scrambling. It's just and then against everyone else this year, McCarthy was just tearing people up, completing 80% of his passes all year. So we have a lot of things to worry about. They could just come out and just start passing like crazy. They could just do all run. I mean, they have a lot of weapons. And the biggest surprise for me the whole game was the fact that Edwards actually looked like a star running back like he did last year. This is his first game, and he actually looked good this year. So I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. What happened with Corum and Edwards really haven't been, playing the way they did last year. But Michigan has a different offense this year. They're more balanced.
Well, no,
so they're
not about that. Not about that. Corum hasn't been quite as good, but he's still been really good. Whereas Edwards is 3.5 yards to carry all year.
Yeah.
Until yesterday. So what happened to Edwards? I don't know.
They must
really
have been
good.
bored with all that bad competition. They had to play the number 1 rush defense in the country, I guess, before they woke up.
It helps when you pop a couple of big ones, and that was really what happened especially in the first half. They popped a couple of big runs where the run blitz is kind of they missed a gap, and as Ohio State found out last year, 2 plays, if you're not gap sound, you're going to give up a big run, and that's really where Michigan feasts in these big games. They have to get big plays out of their run game because they're not a big. I still maintain they're not a big play passing offense, and it showed in that game against Penn State. And Ohio State's got a secondary that's as good, if not better, than Penn State's. So,
depending on who's healthy.
yeah, but still, I mean, even then, I think they're way better than they were last year, especially on the outside. The only vulnerability and Michigan exploited it last year was hitting the seam passes against the nickel defenders. But especially if all the corners are healthy, Hancock at nickel is significantly better than Cam Martinez was last year.
Don't even say that guy's name. I don't even want to hear it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not even close. and for sure, Michigan will not have played as diverse an offense as Ohio State's going to have.
Oh yeah.
They haven't played. I mean, this Penn State offense is dreadful. Aller is not ready, and they were so bad in the pass game. Like Penn State was actually running the football on Michigan. They were running the ball effectively, especially on first down. Nate, how many times was Penn State in 2nd and 5 in that game?
Way too much for my comfort.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
And they just couldn't do anything with it. And then the first drive they had in the second half, where it actually looked like they had something cooking, and Aller fumbles. And then you get the inevitable when they get in the red zone. They had some piss poor play calling in the red zone. And settled, and gave away points there. And then chasing points, going for 2 way too early, like just weird, James Franklin coaching decisions that just really cost them the opportunity. I'm not saying that they would have won the game, but it would have been a 1 or 2 point game instead of, losing the way that they did. And
yeah, for sure.
But I think there were definitely some things there. If you're really objective as a Michigan fan, there have to be some things that worry you a little bit coming out of that game. Like there were definitely some vulnerabilities that Penn State was exploiting, especially in the middle of the defense. They were running right up the gut. They were throwing right over the middle. And that, to some degree, can be exploited by a team like Ohio State.
It can. And you know what? Like going back to what you mentioned about Drew Aller just not being ready, it does seem like they're just trying to fit him into this offense. It's like they're trying to force feed. They're trying to say Drew Aller is what we're going to build our offense around. And it's just like, I can't believe they didn't learn their lesson against Ohio State, because his passes are sometimes so far off. And I kept calling him Drew Bowserman through text. I don't know if you saw that. I think you guys were watching that, but some of his passes that, he didn't even necessarily have a lot of pressure on him. They were just, 10 feet over the top of the receiver. So he's not ready for that. He needs a running game.
I think Antoine had a good point about the one touchdown where, they did go in that jumbo set and they shifted. They had a late shift to the offensive left, and Penn State's defense didn't adjust to it, and they got out leveraged. And Quorum had a big run.
Yeah, that huge run. That was the end of the first half.
Yeah, and that was one where, they were doing such a great job. I thought they had a really interesting plan. For the most part, they were very sound, and I really love the idea of they spied J.J. McCarthy with Abdul Carter, their best athlete. And to me, I was texting some guys, my brother and some other guys, as we were watching the game, and it just seemed like that's going to be the Sonny Styles role. That is going to be the Sonny Styles role when they play Michigan. They're going to put their best athlete on defense to spy him, because McCarthy is a dynamic runner. I mean, he made some big time plays with his feet. He really didn't have to do anything throwing the ball, and he didn't do anything throwing the ball that was remarkable to me. But he did make some plays when he had to with his feet, picked up some big first downs, and then allowed them to keep grinding. But I did like Penn State. I thought Penn State had a good plan overall. I just really think that they were overly aggressive early, and it cost them. But Diaz made adjustments, and they played extremely well the whole second half until they went forward on fourth down in their own territory and basically gave Michigan the ball back. And that's when Corum immediately ripped off the touchdown run. But, I thought Penn State's defense played well enough to win that game.
Oh, they definitely did on defense. But
Brian,
going back, I wanted to talk about Antoine's message here, like about the speed rush, because I was in the
yeah,
beginning of that game. Carson Barnhart on the right side, the right tackle for Michigan,
He's
was
been
just
bad.
getting beat. Like they were just running around him. They did it like 3 straight times almost.
I
And
think part of that too, Nate, is it seemed to me that they had Michigan snap count, like whatever they were doing, like
they stole signs. Are you saying they stole Michigan's signs?
no, I'm not saying that. Let's not go there. No, I just think that they had the snap count because 44. I'm blanking on his name. Chop Robinson.
Chop.
The one that he just absolutely blew by the right tackle, and McCarthy almost got intercepted early on. He anticipated the snap count on that, but I will say like the right tackle can be had, and I would, if I'm Ohio State, I'm going to flip and put JT Tuimoloau on the left defensive left side because he's been the most dynamic when he's been on that side this year. They usually play him on the right, but he's had his best moments of the season, really the last 2 years when he's on the defensive left.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've also done a good job when they've sort of alternated. That way, you can't get used to just blocking one guy. We've had a couple of games like that where they get used to just blocking Sawyer or just Tuimoloau, and then they switch it up and then they get wrecked. But I was going to say, Brian, do you think that the bigger threat this year is going to be Iowa? They just beat Rutgers 20-0. I think that maybe everyone is overlooking. We're putting too much emphasis on Michigan when the threat is Iowa.
I don't think anybody in the Big Ten West is ever going to win that conference. So when they blow up the divisions and we figure out how this conference expands, that's the only time I'm worried about anybody west of that's out of the western side of the conference. So I'm really anxious. The thing that gets me is until we saw the first half, and granted, it's Michigan State. It's Michigan State's terrible. But that first half against Michigan State is the first time all season I really felt like the offense could pretty much do whatever they wanted to. Like if they were in a shootout that they were going to be able to score. Like I had confidence when CJ, even when the defense was atrocious 2 years ago, you knew that CJ Stroud was going to be able to keep the team in it, even if it was a shootout. And we haven't felt that kind of confidence in McCord in this offense all year, but they're starting to hit. They're starting to hit. And you would have liked to have seen them carry that through the second half yesterday, and they didn't. But that first half was as good as they played for a half all year. So, but I'm still a little nervous. It's not so much the grinded out defensive teams that worry me. I'm more worried about a team that's balanced and has explosive offense. So, it's going to be interesting. I mean, no doubt Ohio State and Michigan are the two best teams that that each will have played when they play. So, it really does come down to, which is the coolest thing about this rivalry, right? Your whole season comes down to the biggest rivalry game on your schedule.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's move from Penn State on to Ohio State versus Michigan, because I mean, we're just always, like, in my mind, I'm sure you guys, but it's just always a comparison. Like every week Michigan and Ohio State play each other, and then I go back and think, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for Michigan versus Ohio State later on? And now it's starting to become a little bit real, because Michigan, Ohio State both played a common opponent who has similar roster talent. And so now I'm starting to wonder what it means. And like the last couple weeks, Ohio State, like versus Penn State, both teams, Michigan and Ohio State, both had trouble scoring on them. Okay, I mean that's just what it is. Penn State's got a great defense. It's all right.
Man. Yeah, they're legit, and
they're
I
legit.
like. In fact, Brandon's comment down there, Penn State's D line is better than Ohio State's. You could put them up there for sure, and I think there's definitely some guys, but I don't know that Penn State. The only thing I would argue about Penn State versus Ohio State is I'm not sure that Penn State is as good at the interior defensive line as Ohio State. I do think the defensive ends for Ohio State are a little overrated. I mean, I love JT. I think he's great. Sawyer's is a decent player. I think Sawyer should come back because he really has not been as productive as anybody thought he would.
Sawyer has the better PFF rating somehow.
Yeah,
He's
but
has like an 80 rating against the run and the pass.
He's a solid all around guy. You know, he reminds me of Sam Hubbard. Is who he reminds me of. Is like a guy who's not going to get a lot of sacks, but he's just active and he's disruptive. But I mean, everyone was talking about like Ohio State's going to have 2 first round, maybe top of the first round type defensive ends. Sawyer's not that, but the defensive tackles for Ohio State are legit, and I will say Ohio State's defensive line is very deep. So
yeah, and the other thing too is, Penn State they're probably a little bit more effective at getting to the quarterback, but I think maybe their weakness is not being so focused on trying to get to the quarterback that they don't set the edge, and that's how they kept giving up all those big plays. And I think our team is a little more disciplined on defense than theirs.
Well, you know what though?
We find out.
Like Ohio State, like what are you guys thinking about their D line? And maybe this is D line and linebackers, I'm not sure, but in 2 games now, Rutgers and Purdue, we've seen a running back go for over 100 yards and over 6 yards a carry. And Rutgers running back looked almost unstoppable against the Buckeyes. That's one of the things that kind of like we're excuse me. It's one of the reasons why I'm thinking maybe Ohio State actually has the 3rd best defensive line between Ohio, the Buckeyes, Michigan, and Penn State. I just don't see how that's been fixed if the Buckeyes are giving up that many yards to those running backs and the bad teams. Unless they were just bored, we're playing a bad team. We're a little bored. That happens. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Because it seems like Notre Dame, again, like Luke is saying, got yards rushing too. They're not a bad rushing team, of course, but you got to think about Rutgers and Purdue. That has to be a red flag to you guys. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think number one, you're making it sound just because Purdue, who is a bad team, and Rutgers, who's a good team but is not well rounded, both those running backs are really good. Like they're nationally, in the top. I'm guessing really close to around where Corum is, right? Like there, I think Corum coming into this game, he was ranked like 42, and that includes quarterbacks too. But yards per game, like Maccabee and whatever the guy's name that I can't pronounce from Rutgers, they're both. I mean, they're not as ranked highly as Corum, but they're probably like 60th or 50th or something. I mean, they're really good running backs. And Ohio State, I think it's a little bit different because it's hard to say when literally the only thing you have to worry about is making sure you're not giving up big, like a lot of points. Like if you're beating a team and, like Purdue is not going to come back running the ball. So that's a little bit different. We're just making sure they don't get any passes or big plays. And so he broke off some big runs here or there, but it was never like a concern of losing the game. And then against Rutgers, it was more of a concern because that was sort of close until later in the second half. So that one is definitely a concern. I was a little bit more worried about that, and their quarterback was running too. So, the Rutgers comparison is better because their defense is similar to Michigan's defense, and basically they have the running quarterback like Michigan. They have a good running back like Michigan, except for Michigan sometimes has 2 running backs that are good, just depending. And then the only difference is the Rutgers quarterback couldn't pass, and McCarthy. Throughout the year against bad teams anyway, has been a great passer. So, it's definitely a concern. Like I think, there's definitely a world where Michigan just runs all over us again, just like they did the last 2 years. So it's definitely a concern. But the big upgrade this year is our pass defense. Like Brian was saying before, like our pass defense, even without Proctor and without Ransom and without Burke for a lot of the games, like we just have so many backups that are like all these backups we just keep cycling through here, and they're just all like ridiculous. I mean, they're not quite as good as the starters, but they're all really good. So the depth in the secondary is really going to help. So it's going to keep us in, like even if Michigan's able to drive the ball on the ground successfully and get some points that way, they're not going to be able to get a ton of points because they're just not going to get any big plays in the pass game this year. And it's just going to be a matter of, is that going to be enough? Are we going to be able to slow them down enough where our offense can, because we have way more offensive weapons than they do. It's just they don't their defense is a little bit better. I think, although it's just, we'll find out in 2 weeks on that. But, the big difference is, which style is going to be more effective. And, what do you think, Brian?
Ye Buckeye, hold on. Let me just point something out here. We were all saying the same thing last year about J.J. McCarthy and Michigan not being able to pass on the Buckeyes. And it did happen. And
we had some bad secondary.
I did ask
players
that question
year.
about Rutgers and Purdue.
Nate, what you have to look at, though, I mean, be honest. Go back to the game last year. Okay, I'm not taking anything away from J.J. McCarthy. He balled out when he had to, but he hit the first throw should have been stopped short of the line. It's like a 3rd and 11. It's like a 7-yard out, and Cam Brown misses the tackle and goes for a 70-yard touchdown or whatever it was. They had a couple of other ones were broken coverage. One of them was like a fluke, was like a gadget play, almost a pop pass. They hit on some big plays, and everything that they needed to hit, they hit. And it was there's no question. I mean, I was the first one to say I didn't think that J.J. McCarthy was going to be able to throw on that defense, and he did. But part of that too was that Jim Knowles was extremely aggressive early in that game when he didn't need to be. And you look at this team this year, that is not the way they're playing. They're playing bend. They'll bend, but they are not breaking. And I think that's part of the reason that they've given up some yards. Not to say that they're, that this defense can't be had, but in a lot of cases they're playing with a high shell. The coverage is sitting back and too high a lot of times, and they're daring you to grind drives on them. And to sure, Notre Dame put up yards, Rutgers put up yards, but they didn't put up a lot of points. And if Ohio State, especially in the Notre Dame game, their offense played like dog shit in that game, and there have been points in the season when the offense has just not been clicking. But if their offense is starting to hit more consistently and their defense continues to play the way that they're playing, they're dangerous. They're legitimately dangerous. And I still think it will be the best offense that Michigan will have played all year. I don't think that's debatable. Now, can Michigan run on them? Yeah. I mean, that's why it's going to be a really good game. And if I'm Michigan, I'm gonna bow up and I'm gonna go in those heavy sets, and I'm gonna see if Ohio State, has the toughness to sit there and take it. But I'm telling you, if to me the whole thing, really comes down to McCord just has to protect the ball. This game, this last game, the Michigan State game, he didn't put the ball on the ground. He didn't throw it in harm's way. When he has not turned the ball over, he's been really effective. And if they can protect the football, they're going to be really, really hard to beat. Even if Michigan's at home, they're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't do it.
And you know what? Here's another thing. Like, here's a trap I fall into almost every single year. And even though I know it's a trap, I almost fall into it. Is judging Ohio State or judging Michigan based on how they play other teams. And the last couple of years, you haven't even really been able to do that.
I don't think you could do it at all.
2021,
perfect example, Nate.
Michigan beat Michigan State, right? And then Ohio State crushed Michigan State the game before they played Michigan, and then Ohio State lost. And then Michigan played Illinois and probably should have lost in 2022 last year. Probably should have lost at home. And that basically made me almost call against Michigan playing the Buckeyes. I did because I'm a fan. But, we all thought, they're going to play the way they played against Illinois at Ohio State, and they didn't. It was the polar opposite. So I'm trying not to let those games define how I see the game turning out. I don't think it's going to be – Michigan's not going to try and run the ball like they did against Penn State versus Ohio State because they know they can't. If they try to do that, they'll lose because Ohio State can score. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is it's impossible. The other reason why you can't do those comparisons is because you're going to compare one game earlier in the year. For instance, we know Maryland is always good, really good at the beginning of the year before their guys get hurt. They have no depth, so every year they start off, they look really strong early in the year, and then they get a few injuries, they have no depth, and then all of a sudden they look like trash. They're losing to really terrible teams, and they lose like 3 in a row, and then I think they got really lucky and got a field goal to beat Nebraska. Big deal, like 13-10 on Saturday. But so Penn State 2 weeks ago, we went to that game, and Penn State absolutely obliterated Maryland, like 52 to whatever. I mean, they destroyed them, and we had a close game. We were, tied up with them, and like it was ugly for a while when Ohio State played Maryland, and like, and then we just we beat Penn State comfortably. Just like you guys, they get a score late in the game to make it look closer than it was, but I think we beat Penn State way more effectively than you guys did. We were without Emeka, we were without Travion, and we dominated that game, and they weren't even close to us the entire game. We didn't, and we didn't even punch it in the red zone like we should have, but that's always been our issue. But even that aside, we just it was very comfortable the whole game. And you guys, the only reason it was comfortable for you guys was because you knew Franklin was going to screw it up. But it was like really close until the last 4 minutes when he punted from his own 30, which was just stupid. But your game was closer.
Well, the one thing I don't know. I mean, I think they were more similar than maybe you did, Matt. But in the case that the scores were closer than they should have been for the majority of the game, and they don't look like that if you just look back at the box score now. But the one difference, I think the difference in the way that Ohio State and Michigan beat Penn State is interesting. I'm not saying one's better or worse, but Ohio State, Marv just went off in that game, and they beat them throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan didn't even throw the ball in the second half. It was just incredible that you could ground and pound and still win the game. Now, part of that I think was the fact that Harbaugh wasn't there, and Moore was doing everything he could do to hold on and win that game, and relied on what they do best, which is run the football.
Hey, Brian, real quick question on that. Matt and I were talking about that. Do you think they would have thrown the ball maybe 2 or 3 times in the fourth quarter if Harbaugh was the coach?
I mean, possibly. Who knows? It's got to be for Moore to find out right before the game that you're head coaching and you're calling the offensive plays. Mm-hmm. That's a lot when you've never done that at that level for Michigan's most important game of the season. Like, that's a lot.
It is.
And you saw how emotional he was at the end of the game. That's asking a lot. It really is. And I'm sure that he just, more than anything at the end of that game, just wanted to get out of there with a win and would do whatever he had to win it. Yep. I'm sure when you have a little bit more experience, you're probably a little more willing to, you're gonna have a better feel for when it's time to take some shots. And I was really surprised that they didn't do it more, because the one time that they did throw deep, they got a PI. I thought it was a horse crap pass interference, but it was a PI, and so it's good as a deep completion. But they really didn't try it, and even early on, they were putting McCarthy on the run, so it almost felt like that was maybe part of the scripted part of the game plan, and they didn't do that at all in the second half. So it was really surprising. Now, they didn't have to, but at the same time, I was really surprised at how little they even attempted to throw it. But I mean, when Corum was running the way he was running, and those they were effective, and they were doing what they had to do, and they were getting those chunk plays when they needed to, running the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how if Harbaugh's suspension, if he's suspended for the Ohio State game, I think there is an impact there, and I think there is certainly there's that balance. I mean, Michigan clearly feels like they got a chip on their shoulder, but at the same time, that can also be a distraction. And I do think there is something to being overly confident, and I do think this is a very, borderline overly confident Michigan team. And I don't see that out of this. It reminds me of where Ohio State was 2 years ago, where they thought it was a given that they were going to go into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan, and they got punched in the face, and they didn't respond to it in the second half of that game. But
Yeah, and real
I
quick,
feel like there's
Brian,
some of that in this Michigan team now. I mean, some of the antics that are going on and some of that stuff. I think there is some overconfidence there.
that's interesting you say that. I wanted to address Andrew's question because I've had it up a couple times, and I am nervous. Saying, are you nervous for Michigan versus Ohio State if Harbaugh's not available? And yes, I absolutely am, because I think you need your head coach in a game like that. I honestly think that could be the difference in the game easily if he's not there. Just
Yeah,
because you know that matters. But to what you're saying, Brian, I was kind of thinking the opposite. I was thinking if this whole Stallions thing with sign stealing and scouting hadn't happened, I was thinking like that would have been an issue, that Michigan was overconfident and they were reading their own headlines. And maybe they will after this Penn State game. Maybe they are feeling a little overconfident after that. They shouldn't be. But it's almost like this whole situation with Stallions, and then everyone's saying, oh gosh, Michigan only won the last couple of years because they knew the plays, is actually giving them a chip. It's giving them a huge chip when they should be reading their own headlines. Now they're actually feeling like they've got a chip on their shoulder, and that might power them through. Maybe. We'll have to see.
So before we started, I say I wanted to just briefly mention this, just because we talked so much about Stallions last time. But the initial emergency injunction wasn't denied, but the Big Ten put out a defense saying that they wanted to have a full hearing, and because it was a holiday, they weren't able to do it that day. So that made it so the hearing is now going to be this coming Friday. I think it's fairly likely that Michigan will win, and he will be eligible for the next 2 games. And I think that that's actually a big advantage for us, because I'd rather have him there, because I think while he gives an advantage on game day slightly, like he's going to be helping to coach and plan during the week anyway, because he's allowed to, regardless. But I think it's a bigger advantage to have that extra chip on your shoulder, saying, like when he was suspended at the beginning of the year, JJ had the free Harbaugh on his jersey. And I think that the players are going to rally around it more if he's not there. So I think it's easier to rally around the martyr than it is to, I mean, just look at Sherrone Moore at the end of the game. He was crying and saying how much he loved Harbaugh. I mean, you don't have any of that emotion if Harbaugh's there, right? So the chip on the shoulder and the rallying around the martyr is going to be a lot less if that TRO gets granted. They're able to actually play with Harbaugh the next 2 weeks, which I think is going to happen. I think they're going to get him back.
Even if he is back.
Yeah.
The thing about it is whether they rally around him or they're I can tell you, distractions are not good. Distractions are not good for a team that's coming into the home stretch against their biggest opponent and eyeing up a championship run. And they will have nothing but distractions. So it's if they can run on that kind of emotion the whole time, good for them. But I look at Ohio State and no one's talking about that. And I've never seen a more locked in Ryan Day. Like if you watched any of the Michigan State game, if you watched him the last few weeks, that dude is dialed in. And I'm telling you right now, that team is going to come. That team, they may get beat by Michigan, but they are going to come there ready to go. And they're healthier than they were last year. What were they down to? I mean, Chip trained him. Was that his first game really playing running back last year?
Yeah.
In the Michigan game.
He was really good. Why didn't they use him in the second half? He was destroying Michigan the first half.
I mean, they were down to, scraps in guys that hadn't even really played that position. If you watch the way Travion Henderson is running right now, they're going to make sure that they get him out of that Minnesota game healthy, and he is an absolute difference maker. I maintain right now he's the most valuable player on Ohio State's team. He is
Travion, really?
100%. If you gave me the choice, and I don't want to think about this, but if you gave me the choice between a healthy Travion Henderson and a healthy Marv right now, I want Travion Henderson, because the way they're running the ball is opening up the passing. And I'm telling you right now, it's a different Ohio State running attack that's coming. They're not. it's still not a dominant offensive line, but Travion gives them a legitimate home run threat anytime. And it gives them the balance because they absolutely have home run threats in the passing game. So this is a different. It's weird to say because I think that the team as a whole may be better than where they were last year. Their offense is nowhere near as good as it was last year, but this team is coming in. They're playing their best ball at the right time, and Ryan Day is going to have them locked in. So Michigan better not be distracted by all this stuff, and I don't know how you can't be, even if Harbaugh's on the sideline.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very interesting situation, and I don't think it's 100% that they get this injunction. I mean, Matt, you're a lawyer. Maybe you know a little bit more about this, but I mean, until it happens, I'm just going to assume that Harbaugh is not going to be there.
Well, it's pretty easy to get it. I mean, going over there, they're going to have to show that there's not going to be any kind of major harm if it doesn't get to coach, and it's a pretty big deal. And it's usually granting a temporary injunction. It's not something that's hard to get granted because it's again, it's not a permanent decision. This is just a temporary thing. So I think it's very likely, and then you combine that with the fact that the person went to Michigan. So, the judge is a Michigan. Now I don't know for sure if she's a fan of Michigan, but she went there, so obviously she has some loyalty to Michigan. So, that and the fact that that they ultimately may lose it. So let's say that Harbaugh is not eligible for, I don't know if was it just supposed to be for the regular season. Or I don't know if that counts for
That's what they said.
For the Big Ten championship. I'm not sure if that was included in the regular season or not.
Not sure, but doing it on this Friday for 2 weeks, that would theoretically take them through the Big Ten championship game, if I'm doing my math right.
Well, it would be 2 weeks. So no, because it would. Oh yeah, I guess they're not going to hear it until Friday. So yeah, so it would just be for. One game, and then no, it would just be for 2 games, and then before the 2 weeks would be up like the day before the Big Ten. I don't know if there's a week break. Is there a week break for the Big Ten championship game?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think it played straight away.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Yeah.
But either way, we don't know if it applies to that or not. I'm not even sure. I might have just been the regular season, but I think there's a pretty good chance he's coming back.
Well, and you got to think about.
Because I think it's crazy. Part of me thinks that, part of me thinks that the school and the fan base has to know that this is a unique situation for Michigan. They obviously have a championship caliber team, and they haven't for a long time. So this may be their last best shot. But it's amazing to me that they're drawing this hard line in the sand and not even. And maybe behind closed doors they're entertaining, self-imposing or whatever. That it just reminded me of when Ohio State, had those issues with Tatgate and all that, and they kind of self-imposed. And you typically hear about when schools know that there are going to be violations, they typically are the ones that self-impose and trying to be more lenient for the next year or whatever. And in this case, Michigan's just defiant. And it's crazy because I think there's at least got to be some risk that this is going to get vacated. Whatever they do this year gets vacated. Last year gets vacated. All the stuff that goes back to when they can confirm Stalions was on the sideline potentially gets vacated. And what that's going to do to the future if they do have scholarship reductions or whatever it is. I mean, it's a real risk, and it just seems like everybody on the Michigan side's willing. They're good to sign up for it because if they know we're going to win it, we're going to win it this year, and consequences be damned.
Yeah, I mean they're losing a lot of people next year anyway. Probably their coach and most of their starters, right? So, it's not like they were going to have a good team next year anyway. Their recruiting class isn't special. So this is the year. Like the last 2 years have been good. This is by far their best team. So this is they're definitely going all in.
Yeah, and we don't really know there's the issue. The unique part of this is we've got 2 governing bodies laying down punishments. the NCAA is not going to lay down punishments yet. That's going to take them a long time.
Although
But
they did say it was expedited.
But
Whatever
Michigan
that
still
means.
has like 90 days to respond. Even
No, I know.
NCAA hasn't even given them a
It's
notice
not
of
going to be this
allegations
year.
yet.
I'm just saying it might be under a year because
And the
It might
penalties
be
might
2
be more
years.
severe, and the
Yeah.
penalties may very well be more severe if and when they come. That's typically why schools will self-impose punishment ahead of time to try to get some leniency on that stuff. And it just
almost
seems
everyone does. Brian, do you recall anyone ever fighting it like this and not like saying that they're sorry and basically doing everything they can to try to make it so the NCAA just goes away? Like, remember Tennessee? They did a really hardcore punishment on themselves, like took away a bunch of scholarships and just did a bunch of stuff. I can't remember anyone ever fighting it like this.
Let me speak to that real quick. Again, we've got a unique situation because we've got two different governing bodies poking their head. Like the Big Ten, they're fighting it now. They're fighting the Big Ten. They're not fighting the NCAA.
Correct.
This is the Big Ten. The new commissioner, Mr. what's his name, Titty, is coming out and just saying, hey, we haven't gotten all the facts yet, so we're just going to let, like Joel Klatt said. I don't agree with everything he says, but he said something interesting. Basically, the Big Ten is just trying to settle down the mob, and they're responding to the mob and just coming out and saying, hey, 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh. And then they came out and said, well, it's not really a Jim Harbaugh suspension. It's a, what did they say? It's
university. It's a university, and he's the figurehead of the university.
We're suspending Jim Harbaugh, though.
Here's the thing that bothers me.
That's really what fighting.
Yeah, no one's disputing that, Nate. No one's disputing that's what they're talking about. What's wild though is how on the one side you can claim due process, and on the other end you can let all three assistant coaches go without due process. Like, they knew the one guy whose house got raided by the FBI, the other guy who's the pedophile, and now you got Connor Stalions too. All three of them been let go this season. And it seems a little bit hypocritical to go, okay, due process for us, but not for them. They weren't letting the legal process play out for any of the other guys, so they were moving on. And I think that was the right decision, by the way, to do that. But it's just holy crap, all the stuff that's going on around that program. Like, it's not in a good place. I mean, I think it's not in a good place. It's really not. There's nothing going to happen on the football field.
Yeah, Brian, it's a good point. You just made a really good point about them not giving due process to their assistants. That's a good point. I hadn't actually thought of it that way. They kind of tried with Stalions. They suspended him with pay. And then I think because of all of the evidence, they basically said, hey, I guess the only difference is it's Michigan was making the decision about a Michigan staffer. It wasn't the Big Ten, hearing all the coaches complain, and then they came down. It was unprecedented what they did.
My point is,
so is there cheating?
And the defense to the cheating thing has been like, well, everybody does it, and the coach didn't know anything about it, which is, we know it's all horseshit. Like, it's all going to play out. It's all going to come. It's all going to go bad for Michigan in the end. But it's just, I don't necessarily blame. It's weird. I don't necessarily blame the university, the football program, and the fans for supporting going after it this year. But you can't tell me that it's going to be very short-sighted, and they better win, because if they lose them to Ohio State, then there's been no point to any of this, like none of it. And if they don't go on and win a championship, there's no point to any of this, because they are absolutely going to their future is going to be sacrificed at the altar of this season.
Yeah, and then the other thing was just think about it. So the Big Ten, I mean, they didn't avoid any due process with this decision here. So under the Big Ten sportsmanship rule, like they sent the allegations to Michigan. Michigan had a certain 2 days or something to reply. Michigan requested an extra day to reply to that, so that was granted. So they took 3 days to reply. They replied. They weren't happy, obviously, and then the Big Ten took 2 days to come up with their punishment, and then everyone from Michigan was upset because it happened to be when he was on the flight to Happy Valley. but it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been on that flight had they made the ruling and not given Michigan an extra day to do it. And think about it. Do you really think that the Big Ten is going to just, make this unprecedented move for one of their members that has a chance to make a lot of money for the team? Because let's say Michigan beats Ohio State and then we get two teams into the playoffs again like last year. That's a lot of money for the league. And, they're potentially sacrificing that because if Michigan, doesn't make it, then, it's, all it is just, potentially just one team. And, that's pretty risky right there. So, the NCAA is basically telling the Big Ten, look, this is our evidence. It's really bad. You're going to have to take an unprecedented step here to do something because, this is not something we've ever dealt with before. And we don't even have all the evidence yet. There's no link between Harbaugh knowing yet. But again, this investigation's only been going on for a month. The Ohio State investigation and most investigations take a year. And there hasn't been any FOIA requests yet from all the media companies that are going to be getting stuff, and they're going to be combing through every email from Harbaugh and all the assistants for the last year, and they're going to find some. They're going to find some more dirt. And I mean, there's already enough that Harbaugh, under the new rule, is liable for anything that happens under his coaches. If the end run rule was put in place this year, if you're in charge, you're toast. If something bad happens,
it's not just one thing. Like this particular thing that the Big Ten's doing is about the advanced scouting, but that's not the only issue going on. Like there are multiple issues going on.
They haven't even gotten a ruling on the last one.
No, so it's, but even then, like I said, that the fact that everyone's talking about that is a distraction for the football team these last couple weeks, and it's not good. I mean, you can say that you're going to rally around that, great, but I'm telling you, all of the extra media scrutiny that's going to be on them and everything else that's going on, it's really, really hard. It's hard enough to win when you're absolutely dialed in and you're not surrounded by an absolute media circus. But this is going to be nuts, and it's not going to back off.
It's interesting. It's going to be interesting, like you said, to see that, because Michigan, if they would have lost to Penn State, it would have been fever pitch, right? Like everyone would have said, wow, Michigan, they were only winning because of those signs they were stealing. Yep. And now that they won, I'm wondering if I don't think it'll settle down necessarily, but we won't know that until we actually get, what we hear back from Harbaugh on Friday. It's going to be probably fever pitch. But I think whatever happens after that, it may die down a little bit. Because Michigan did come out and prove everyone. I mean, they lost their coach, like you said, on the flight to Penn State to play, and then they had to have a coach who'd never really coached before, Sherrone Moore, go to Penn State in a terrible place to play. Everyone knows a whiteout is a terrible place to play, and they still came out on top.
You guys are lucky that was a noon game instead of a night game.
Yeah, and so. They really, the Michigan team probably feels like they proved something to themselves and everyone else, and I'm thinking that
I don't want any excuses, Nate. I want Harbaugh on the sideline. The only thing I didn't want was Connor Stalions on the freaking sideline, because that's some bullshit. Like, he's not on the sideline, so come on out, be at full strength, and let's go. I don't want any excuses either way, and I want a good game, and it should be a celebration of the fact that this rivalry's back. Both these teams are two of the top 5 teams in the country, and both teams, if it's as good a game as it should be, both teams should still have a chance at playing for a national championship, whoever wins it.
And someone commented about the hamburgers. It wasn't about the hamburgers. It was about not cooperating with the NCAA. That's
which
why.
Has been Jim Harbaugh's MO the whole time. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it is, the whole thing is pretty silly. The NCAA,
it's not,
and I think
silly,
a lot, but a lot of what
culture,
the
man.
silliness. No.
Why was Tressel given a 5-year show cause? It wasn't because of the tattoos. It's because he lied.
Different time.
He lied though. He lied.
The
NCAA does not like when you lie or not cooperate with them. That pisses them off. That's how you get in trouble.
But do you think that the NCAA is giving equal opportunity to all schools? Like Texas A&M, everyone knows they paid their players.
But that's-
NCAA didn't
evidence.
show
I
up.
know, it's not even illegal anymore, Nate.
Yeah,
Like, with
but
the
it was
NFL,
back
you can
then.
do that.
They didn't have any. They didn't have evidence of that one though.
And
No, they
it is, man. The problem is it's not just one thing, Nate. There's evidence of the advanced scouting
Sure.
issue. There's also evidence of the guy who was rated by whose computer was rated by the FBI.
We don't know what that's about yet, though.
These things are going to come out. These things are going to come out. It's not just one thing. There are several things going on that speak to an issue, a cultural issue in that program. That's another reason why I think, anyway, Harbaugh that the extension was taking so long with Harbaugh. He was clearly fighting with the higher ups in the structure, in the organization of the university, and there's bad blood there. Like, there are issues. Yes, he has rebuilt that program, and credit to him, he's done a great job, especially the last couple of years. But to say that there aren't problems there, Nate, I think I think you're underselling it. And I think what's going to end up happening is, there's a very good chance that significant punishment is coming down the pike next year for that program.
Yeah, and so here's the thing that's a little different. So these two things I think can be true at once. You can admit that the Stalions thing is a problem, that it happened, that it was against the rules, but you can also think maybe it's a dumb rule that the NCAA tried to actually vote out in 2013, and 55% of schools actually voted to get rid of that advanced scouting rule. And you can still think that that's not as big of a deal that everyone's making it out to be, where you'd be losing games, like games don't count, you're going to get bowl bans. I just don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. I think you can still say there needs to be a punishment. Sure,
Yeah,
it happened.
So
there needs to be a punishment. But why is this going to be a huge punishment? We've already seen it with Baylor.
Nate, you always bring up. Yeah, I know. You always bring up that 55% thing. So let's say, the rule can be. It doesn't have to be this rule. Any rule. It could just be like the dumbest rule. But there's two things. It didn't pass. It remained a rule, and everyone knew it was a rule. And so I'm not saying other people aren't doing it, but they were, the ones that were dumb enough to leave their Venmo on public and say what you're paying people for. But if you know the rule is, even if you disagree with it, that's not how you go about changing the rule. You get the rule changed. You don't just blatantly disregard the rule and get caught. And then it's just so ridiculous how you keep on thinking that this isn't a thing. Like, is a cheater going to cheat if they don't think it's going to add any value? Like, the hard thing is we can't tell how much value it actually adds. Is it giving 3 points a game? Is it giving 10 points a game? We don't know. Michigan
the advanced scouting, right?
Yeah,
not the sign stealing. The advanced scouting.
Yeah, right. We don't know how much that value that gave, and that's the thing, because they did it, and they might have won all their games without it, but they cheated, and there's no way for us to know for sure how much.
But again, it's really about the punishment. How much punishment should there be? It's not a question of whether it was illegal or not. It's about how much punishment should there be. Because I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be illegal.
Let me ask you something. What did they ever say? And this is a little bit different subject. Did they ever say exactly what Matt Weiss did?
No.
We have no idea.
The only thing we know is it was a computer crime. That's all we know.
Yes.
No clue.
And has there been any confirmation? Because I had heard that they were not with him, but they were talking about this thing with the somebody had gotten the username information for the Ohio State.
And took 50 hours of the practice film. Yeah, we don't know what that was,
and we haven't heard anything more about that in the last couple of weeks.
But
that's what I say. Like, if that stuff is true, where they're hacking onto cloud servers and getting access to practice film, and it's been and it's distributed to coaches, like, there's more stuff than just the advanced scouting. Maybe that stuff's just rumors. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be anything, but man, there's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of problems there. And that's the stuff I'm talking about. It's not just this Connor Stalions buying tickets for people to go film the opposition's sidelines. It's way, way, way beyond that.
Yeah, it could be, but that's all speculation right now. So we don't really know what that is. It's potential, but I just keep having to go back to,
like I'm saying, Weiss isn't there. The other dude, the pedophile coach, isn't there, and Stalions isn't there anymore. I mean, it's not just one guy. This isn't just one guy. It's not just isolated. There's multiple issues all within the last 12 months in that program.
You're speaking to the preponderance of evidence of all these things happening, and that it's like the whole. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. There's a lot going on there, and I don't know if Jim Harbaugh is going to want to be there next year anyway. I wouldn't if I was him, and I hope, honestly, because he tried to go to the NFL twice the last 2 years, I've been wanting him to go for a long time for recruiting reasons, because they're about to go into 2024, the much harder schedule, and 2021 and 2022 recruiting have been trash in comparison to what it should be. After all that winning and playoffs, their recruiting has not taken off, and it's Jim Harbaugh's fault because he tried to go to the NFL. That's what I think.
It definitely didn't help.
No. So I'm actually okay if he goes. I mean, I don't.
Wouldn't you prefer that he signed a lifetime contract? Because that's what everyone in Michigan assured me like 2 weeks ago, right after this broke. Everyone said, "Oh, well, they're gonna say F you to this investigation, and we're gonna sign Jim to a lifetime contract." So your concern about recruiting issues is not going to be a concern if he's signed to a lifetime contract, right?
Yeah, I guess, but you know how big that buyout's going to be? It's going to make probably Jimbo Fisher's buyout look like, like tiny, 10% or something. They know he's going to go to the NFL, and it may not stop him anyway.
Yeah.
So
they cut his salary a couple of years ago, and there's been a lot of rumors about the structure of this latest deal that protect that seem like that demonstrating cause would be much easier for the university. So it just seems to me, Nate, it's just weird, and I don't know, maybe I'm way off base, and maybe I'm just seeing this through scarlet colored glasses, but it definitely feels like Michigan as a whole knows that this is their last best shot to win a title, and they will defend it no matter what to the last inch. And Ohio State, this may not be their best shot. And that really, in terms of a long-term stock, right now in a short-term stock, Michigan may be the better buy. But Ohio State is the better long-term play. Like they're still on an ascendant path, track.
And our recruiting is amazing.
I don't disagree.
Better. They've shored up the issues with the defense. They got their NIL in a pretty good place. There's no reason to think that Ohio State won't be a contender for the title for the next, the way they've been for the last 10 years. That it may not be every year, but certainly, more years than not, they're going to be there. And Michigan may not be there in a couple of years.
It's very possible, and it's because of the lack of recruiting over the past 2 years. And they just haven't done it when they could have. Now, granted, this next one with like Jaden Davis is going to be a better recruiting year. But next year, if JJ goes pro, they got no quarterback. I mean, Jaden Davis will be there in 2024. It's going to be a true freshman.
Don't forget the transfer portal, mate. You guys will get someone easy.
Transfer portal, someone's got to come in for that. I don't know why Donovan Edwards would leave, but he might.
Plenty of good quarterbacks you can get in the portal.
Very possible. But, I mean, I still going back to this. It does feel like these coaches on this call with the commissioner were just pearl clutching big time. And, like, trying to say, like this whole rule, I'm still just – the only part that irritates me is when I have to hear about, like, we're going to be vacating wins or we're going to be missing bowl games.
Well, I would be annoyed by that too.
Yeah, I'm annoyed because I think that's so harsh. I mean, okay, here, I'm going to go out on a football field and I'm going to make a sign like I'm going to do that in front of 100,000 people with HD video recorders in their hands and on national television and then complain because someone saw me do that. Do you realize how ridiculous that is? And to say like I'm so shocked that someone saw me do that it ruined my whole game plan and it gave someone some advantage. Like I'm just not.
Well, just think about how easy that would have been to do and not get caught.
Yes,
everyone in the SEC is doing that.
Connor Stalions is an idiot. He bought the tickets in his own name and went to the games.
Oh my God,
he's the worst.
Left his Venmo public. It was
Yeah,
just like he's obviously
not
a
a professional criminal.
He went to the Naval Academy. He's a really smart dude, but he's a bad criminal.
Yeah, it's very possible. Like how many? I think Antoine was saying like they've got 300 or 400 people on staff. You can have someone just start going to games and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, but the difference is the guy's not standing next to the DC, the coordinators and the head coach on the sideline.
Well, that doesn't mean that they knew he pre-scouted it though.
And
went to the games. Come on now. That just means that he had signs, which you can get on game film.
Come on, man.
You can get on the game.
So you cannot get them on game. First of all, that's not true. If you get all 22,
I was
just get a couple.
You do not
get a couple.
Granted, you can't get all.
You cannot get all of them, and there are certainly people in other programs looking at TV copy versus the all 22s and trying to time that stuff up. Not saying that, but what they were doing is against the rules, and they were clearly benefiting from it. And there's absolutely no plausible deniability that they didn't know what he was doing, because he was, even when he was an intern, he's standing next to coaches that an intern in a normal program, one of those like pick a program, Iowa, one of those 200 or 300 people that are support staff, GAs and stuff, they don't get anywhere near the coaches on game day. They don't get anywhere near.
And what was he holding, Brian? He had laminated papers of the call signs.
Yeah.
So that was before the game started. So that means someone was printing these up. And they knew that he was printing these up before the
game signs. It's not illegal to steal game signs, so that part's okay.
No, not stealing.
He pre-scouted.
He pre-scouted. He had like a big binder of laminated signs that you're only getting 8 signs from the all 22 and the TV copy. You're getting maybe 8 or 10 signs total.
I don't know
if you're lucky.
Look, I think
one Purdue had was a big old spreadsheet of signs, so they obviously got them somehow.
And that Purdue one was from 20. Part of it was from 2020. It was like the COVID year. So how is that even possible? We didn't play them that year. We didn't even play you guys that year.
I honestly hope that this goes to that we move on to helmet speakers.
Oh yeah, well that's 100% happening. That's 100%.
It's the dumbest thing. It's actually pretty fun. I've taken my teenage son to some college football games, and one of our favorite things to do is watch the guys signaling in, because it's the goofiest shit you ever want to watch.
Yeah,
it is. I actually want to get a gig as like one of the fake signal guys, just making shit up. Like it's the silliest stuff you've ever seen, right?
You're just doing YMCA all the time.
Yeah, you're just doing dumb shit. It's
all right. I want to switch subjects if you guys don't mind and talk about.
Because I got to bail pretty soon.
Yeah, I wanted to get into a little bit of the Heisman discussion, and then also just sort of like what you guys think the top 4 is going to be at the end of the year. So let's do Heisman first. Who's going to be how many people are going to New York, first of all? I think it's going to be a lot. I think we'll probably have at least 5, right?
I would say at least, well, maybe not that many, but probably 3 or 4.
There's a lot of deserving people this year.
Yeah. I mean, my guy, to me, the most dynamic player in the country right now is Jaden Daniels.
Oh,
and
100%.
The fact that he got knocked out of that Alabama game is unfortunate, because he was destroying people. Like that dude is crazy. And the fact, I don't even want to hear it that his defense is terrible. They are terrible this year, but he has been electric. And Jaden Daniels, to me, he's got to be up there. He would be my Heisman Trophy winner, but he won't win it. But he definitely should be a finalist. And certainly I think Marv deserves to be there and might just win it. I mean, if he keeps racking up multiple touchdown games and he goes up and scores 2 touchdowns against Michigan, like that dude's winning the Heisman. And then Penix is obviously putting up stupid. For the most part, he's been putting up stupid numbers.
He doesn't have a lot of touchdowns though.
No, he doesn't. And he had that Arizona State game. That one could come down to who wins the Pac-12.
Yep.
It might be Bo Nix, but even then, I don't know that any of those guys have really had the gaudy numbers to win it. And so, I don't know that I don't know who else is really out there to me that really jumps off the page. That's why I think this could be a year for Marv to win it. But I do think Jaden Daniels to me would be my pick.
Jaden.
So how many people do you think are going then?
I don't want to hear
You're gonna have
I don't want to hear any talk about JJ McCarthy
Oh, well,
in the Heisman.
he's definitely out after last week.
Dude, no. 60 yards passing and not even an attempt in the second half. You don't trust when your coaches don't even trust you to throw the ball in the second half of a big game like that. I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. He's a good college quarterback, not a Heisman Trophy winner.
I don't necessarily think Penix and Nix are going to go. I think it'll be whoever wins that game. Whoever wins, I mean, it's possible they both go, but I think it's more likely whoever wins that game is going to be one of them. And then
Oregon's winning if they play again.
Well, I mean, Oregon should have won the last time and they didn't.
Well, that's because their coach, I think, James Franklin and cost them points.
Yeah, but he's still their coach.
Yeah,
I could see him doing that again, and Oregon seems like the better team for sure, but if I were to bet money, I would also bet on Oregon. But it's going to be a great game, and I can't wait to watch it again. And both those teams have sort of been up and down this year, so it's hard to tell. And Oregon hasn't played anyone good. I mean, they have no wins over a ranked team other than Utah. I think will probably still be ranked, even though they have 4 losses now. I still think they'll probably come in around 22 or something. I think
Jordan Travis has to be in there too. I mean, if Florida State goes undefeated.
No, I think Travis does too, but his stats are way lower than the rest of the guys.
Yeah,
even though I think he's super talented. Like having a mobile quarterback who's accurate,
right
who doesn't
now,
throw interceptions.
Milrose's numbers look pretty good the last few, but he didn't. He had those issues.
Everyone who plays LSU always has a Heisman game because LSU and USC just pad everyone's stats. I wish we got to play those teams.
We might get a chance to play some Florida State. Same way they've let some people move the ball on them. It'd be fun to see.
You gotta. There's probably going to be 4 people invited. I think. I think it's just going to be the winner of Oregon versus Washington.
So Nix and Penix are both awesome, and then Jaden Daniels I think will still get invited. Marvin will 100% be invited. Who else?
Marvin has a chance. They would have to win the game though. If Ohio State wins the game,
no, he's gonna get invited no matter what.
Yeah,
he'll get invited no matter what.
I was thinking winning. I'm talking winning.
Oh, winning. Oh yeah. I was just saying. Yeah. So I think we're gonna have 3 or 4 people. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I think he has a big game against Michigan. I think because so much of the Heisman Trophy, I don't agree with it at all, of course, but so much of it's someone who is a big name coming into this year because they had a good year last year, right? And you also combine, a lot of times they give the award as sort of like a lifetime achievement award, and usually Ohio State players don't ever stick around long enough. A lot of these top players, like they have one good year, they go to the NFL, and Marvin had his good year as a sophomore, so he's the first person at Ohio State to have 2 1,000-yard games, 1,000-yard seasons, which actually surprised me. I didn't even realize that. But you get that lifetime achievement, back-to-back All-Americans, and just putting up silly numbers, and also the big advantage over someone, like the awesome wide receiver at Washington, Aduze, and then Malik. What's his last name? The LSU guy. That guy's a beast.
Yeah, Neighbors.
Yeah,
and
Neighbors.
Has been really good.
So
too.
the difference is those receivers have ridiculous quarterbacks throwing to them, and we have Honda McCord. So I think that's the big tip of the hat goes to Marvin for that, because he doesn't have the quarterback these other guys do.
Yeah, fair. So
all right, so now what are the top 4 guys? Top 4, who's going to make it playoffs?
Well, I guess I'll go because I got to jump off here in a minute. Man, it's gonna be crazy because you got Ohio State and Michigan playing, and clearly the winner of that game is going to be one of them. You got the SEC championship game, which is going to be Georgia against Alabama.
What happens if Bama wins that? Do they both make it?
Possibly.
It's so crazy. This year would have been the perfect year for the 12-game playoff.
Yeah, Georgia's starting to play really good football, and if they put on,
and so is
that it's going to be. And Alabama's playing the best they played all year. That's going to be unbelievable. And then you got likely Oregon and Washington playing again. You got Texas.
So many good teams.
Texas is still lurking out there. They've got that really good win in Tuscaloosa.
Banks is out for the year though. They're done.
Yeah, and I don't think they're that good anyway. But
but he was their offense, man. He was a stud.
But if Florida State, wins out, they'll have to be one of those four. They'll be an undefeated conference champion, and they'll be in it. And that's where it gets tight because I'm not really sure, depending on what goes on in the Pac-12 with Florida State and possibly Texas, this might be a tough year to get two teams in from the same conference.
Florida State could lose to Louisville. I mean, they haven't been dominant. They've had a lot of close games.
I don't have a lot of hope in it, though. I think that still think they're going to end up in it. So
they have the easiest path, but it's still like they're also like sort of, they've had probably more close games than anybody, right? And I mean, Washington's had quite a few close games too.
I don't know. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would have to. So who are you for?
Okay, so gun to my head, I'd say Georgia, and I think Georgia's going to probably win it all again this year.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think Ohio State's going to beat Michigan, so I'll put Ohio State in there. I think Florida State's going to end up running the table. They'll be in there. And fourth team, I'll say Oregon. I don't think we're going to get two teams from the same conference this year.
Yeah, I think that's
not without help.
Most likely thing.
Not without help.
The only thing I guess I'm not sure about would have been whether or not Bama is going to beat Georgia or not. They're like you said, they've been looking good. It's against team, Kentucky and LSU. I just don't think that they're that great. So
did we lose Nate?
Yeah, he said he just it kicked him off somehow. But yeah, I guess we could just, I don't know how to stop the thing. But I guess we could just close out now. I'll go with FSU. Georgia, Ohio State, and I still think Washington's going to pull it out. Even though I think Oregon's a better team, but I don't have faith in their coach to make good decisions. He's going to Franklin it again. So we'll go with Washington and be a little bit different.
Good one. I like it.
Yep. All right,
Matt.
Let's sign out.
See you, Nate, wherever you are.
All right, OH.
IO.
All right, later.